Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Marilyn Suchan, a producer of Catalyst, and I'll be hosting today's session and also participating a little bit. So to start off, we are doing Making the Move and Breaking Through in LA, and we have three awesome ladies joining us today. Starting off, we have Lauren Wells. Give a little wave, Lauren. Lauren is a writer from New York who has worked on shows such as Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Happy, and Angelyne. Currently, she is a writer's assistant for the Fox comedy What We Do in the Shadows. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Next, we have Angela Harrer. Give a little wave, Angela. Angela is an 8-time Boston Northeast Emmy award-winning writer, producer, and director who relocated from Boston to Los Angeles in 2018. She is currently a showrunner's assistant on Apple TV's upcoming series about the life of Hedy Lamarr, starring Gal Gadot. And we have Jamie Osganian. Give a wave, Jamie. Thank you. Jamie is originally from Massachusetts and graduated from NYU Tisch in 2018 with a degree in film and television. She moved to LA 2 years ago and is currently working on scripted TV shows as a production office PA. In the future, she hopes to work as a writer in scripted television. Thank you, ladies, so much for being here with us to share all of your experiences. I want to start off with thanking all of our sponsors and moving right on into our discussion for today. So starting off, we are going to talk about your first studio network job and what was that path like? How did you get your first studio or network job?
Who's going first?
Do you want to do it?
I'll do it. First job ever was like an additional day player set PA on a movie that I think Richard Gere was in. And I just was in charge of lockups on the street and like making sure that pedestrians didn't come through. But a lot of my first jobs were on set. And I'm really glad that they were, because now when I go to set with my showrunner or the writers, I know exactly who to ask for what. And I'm really glad that I started that way.
That's wonderful. How about you, Angela?
So mine dates back quite a ways when I was still in New York. I was working on set as well. I think my first network studio job was on a comedy on Comedy Central called Stella. It was a fun experience. I was working in the camera department, and then I moved to art department on another show for PBS. And so, yeah, I had that same experience, like working on set. It's always very helpful. It really teaches you like what to expect, long hours, kind of working with a large team and what it takes. And yeah, that's how I got started.
Yeah. And you, Jamie?
I guess my first it was mainly an internship while I was in New York at school. I worked on a reality TV show production. So that was my first experience in the industry. And then obviously when I moved out here, my first job was as an office PA on a show called LA's Finest. So
nice. Yeah. Very cool. And my first studio or network job was as a PA when I first moved here on Shark Week for Discovery. And I was a PA, and then along the way I just started pitching jokes to Bob the Shark, and his name is Bob Oshak, and he liked the jokes and was like, that's great, go write them in my book. And so this other PA and I just kept thinking of jokes and different little bits for him, and he used a lot of them on screen. So I went up to him and I was like, can I say that I was your writer's assistant? And he was like, yeah, of course, I would love that. And then he wanted to give us like a gift card for helping him. And I said, well, instead of the gift card, would you meet us for coffee and tell us what it's like to be a comedy writer and how to break in? And he said yes. And he showed up with a gift card still, taught us about becoming comedy writers, and was just the sweetest person. So it was a good first break-in for me.
Awesome.
Thanks, ladies.
Yeah.
So you broke in and you had these wonderful experiences. And what was that moment like for each of you where you thought, it's time, I have to make the move, I have to go to LA? Do you want to start off, Angela?
Sure. Mine's a little convoluted. So I started out in New York. I worked those jobs. Then the recession hit, and jobs were just drying up in New York. So I went to Boston to be with my sister and figure things out and see what was going to happen with the industry. And I ended up working in news for 5 years. And I had to kind of come to the realization all over again that, wait, I'm not a journalist and I want to get back to like making television that's, scripted or unscripted, but just has more of a creative element to it. And then I started working at a regional station and produced my own show for, I think, 6 years with a regional station there, with the co-producing partner. And that was really fun. And then that job disappeared. Our department got shut down and they were trying to put me into a new department. And I had to ask myself, like, is this the direction I really want? And ultimately it wasn't. And I, at the time when I had graduated from film school, didn't have the means to come to LA. But by this time I had saved up enough money where it just made sense to make the move. And I had had this like restlessness in me saying like, you got to try this and you'll always wonder. And I finally just did it.
That's amazing. When you were doing the news side of things, did you feel any connection to storytelling with that? Or is it just a complete break?
There are vast differences in just like the daily production of it all. But bottom line, you do learn how to tell a story very economically, which is across the board a standard for television writing and film. Every line counts, every action counts in a script, and it's even more so with shorter form content for the news. So I was writing teases and creating promos that like were 3 lines.
Wow.
So you had to tell a whole story. And that was happening like every day. You had about 2 to 3 hours to pick your stories that you were going to promote, write it, go into production on it, get your, anchors or reporters to send in their feeds or direct them downstairs in the studio. Then you had to bring it upstairs, order your graphics, get your post-production team in place, and basically make like 6 to 7 essentially little promotions that would go on the air nightly. Yeah, you'd make about 6 or 7 in just 3 to 4 hours. So it was intense. It's a lot of running around.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And how to hustle in news and how to let go of things too. Because there are days where just another news story hits in the middle of it all and you have to throw out everything you just did and start all over.
Wow.
Yeah.
So do you translate that to your own writing right now when it comes to just fine tuning things and killing off your babies, as they call it? And
I'm very good at killing off babies. It's terrible.
I know, we got to rework that, guys. Among us, we could figure a new phrase out.
Both that experience and then working on The Folklorist, which was the show I produced in Boston, those both taught me just how to take myself out of it and my emotions and just focus on the product and, how clear it is to an audience. I became a really good judge of even my own work from just doing it over and over and over again daily. So
yeah, so you learned how to be an outsider pretty quickly. That is awesome. Jamie, would you like to hop on next and tell us what made you move to the West Coast?
Yeah, sure. I moved to LA pretty much a month after I graduated from NYU. So I graduated in NYU May 2018, and then I moved out here June 17th, 2018. So I think for me, I always had the idea that I wanted to come to the West Coast. I grew up on the East Coast, obviously went to school on the East Coast, so never really been out here much, and I think never been this far away from home. So I wanted to give it a shot and see how it went, and now I've been here for 2 years, and so it worked out.
Yeah. Wow,
So,
you wasted no time. You're like, I got my cap and gown, and now I got a plane ticket.
Yeah,
Later.
yeah. I think
you.
from hearing professors too, that was the one thing that everyone kind of told me once I was graduating, is to move to LA if you want to be a writer. So yeah.
Amazing. And I heard that with NYU, since it's such a big school, that there are a lot of really great alumni connections that can be made. Was that helpful for you when you landed here?
I have kind of a weird story for how I got my job. and it wasn't through school, but I know NYU does have a lot of great resources. They do have an alumni association, and they did just open a big school out here, like just for film and TV in LA. So, and they all, they have great professors that work in the industry. So it's definitely helpful to have gone to that school and have that school on my resume. So,
yeah. And Lauren, how about you?
I just realized that I'm almost at my year mark
Woohoo!
of being out here. Woo! Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So I'm definitely a newer transplant, but the thing that did it for me was not only years of people saying, oh, you want to be a writer? Well, you have to go to LA. I wanted to come to that on my own and make that decision for myself, because I saw that there were rooms in New York, and I got to work in a few of them, and I thought, there is a whole world of this here. I can stay here, but I think it would have eaten away at me if I hadn't at least come out and tried it once in my life, to come out here and really see what it was that everyone was talking about. And I think after like 5 or 6 years of moving along in different assistant jobs in New York, I was a set PA, an office PA, a production secretary, a writer's assistant, a line producer's assistant. I assisted actresses. Like, finally it clicked for me that your resume is good enough to go to LA and you will find work there. And I think that I had to feel fully confident that even though I didn't know anybody here, that maybe all the things I'd done in New York could translate to here. And it did. So, but it was scary to come to the conclusion and get on the plane and come out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a huge deal, moving away from all of your family and friends and the life you knew so well. I mean, California is very different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, when I made the decision, it was because I had produced this festival. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Catalyst. And it was my first year producing this festival. And all of the executives one night just were asking me, when are you going to move to LA? Why are you in New York? When are you going to move? But it's that torn feeling of all of my family and friends are here. I'm going to make it work. And I'm a little stubborn at times. So I was very much, I am going to make it work in New York. My career is going to happen. TV is coming here. I'm on the wave. But the reality was, I now had all these amazing connections from producing the festival, and it was now or never. And so it married that I need my logic and my gut to match. So when my logic said, well, now you have all these connections. So that feeling of what if I moved to LA met each other, and then the spreadsheets of how to make the move happen began, because there were several. Did you ladies have spreadsheets to plan your move? How did you go about your move?
I think I couldn't sleep. It was more a matter, I just knew it had built up in me for so long. I just knew if I didn't try it, the restlessness was just getting to me. So I didn't need to make a list, because I knew it was going to be a hard move. I think the day I got on the plane, my boyfriend's still in Boston. So
yeah.
It was a lot of tears and just walking on the plane. I just didn't know what I was about to walk into.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But did you have lists of how to make that move happen, like movers and roommates, and where are you going to live when you land? How did you all sort those details out?
I fortunately had a good friend from NYU that I had kept in touch with over the years, and she said she'd put me up for a few weeks while I looked for an apartment. So I was able to stay on a couch for the first few weeks. And
that is so helpful.
It was very helpful.
Yeah.
One thing I'm glad I did was I came out for a week. I had never been here before, and I came out for a week to see if I would like it. And I set up a week of meetings, like 3 a day. And I don't have a manager to do that for me at all, but I just racked my brain about like, who do I know? Or, from the productions I'd worked on in New York, I would think about all the people that were coming from LA to do set visits, or their assistants, the assistants to the production executives and stuff like that. I thought about them, and I was like, well, they're all in LA. maybe I can meet them. You know, we've been working together for years. Like maybe I can come out and have these meetings. And I'm really glad I did a week visit. I think like coming out and making sure you really want to do it is a good way to test the water.
Absolutely.
And then when I did the real move, lots of lists and selling furniture. But the one thing I regret is not paying the extra $50 to pick my seat on the plane. Because I was in the middle,
it's a long flight.
crying the whole way out. I was just like, what have I done? Between two people. I was like, this is so scary.
Yeah.
So I wish I'd picked that aisle seat.
Yeah. Lessons learned.
Yeah. Pro
For
tip.
sure. So let's move on to how your working relationships brought you the jobs that you have now. Who wants to start us off? Jamie, how did that work for you?
I guess this is a good place to bring up my weird story of my first job, how I got my first job. So for me, while I was in college, I started watching a show called The Blacklist, which is on NBC, and became quite a big fan of the show, and just knew everything and anything about it. And I found some of the writers on Twitter, and their Twitter accounts, and I would live tweet the show with them and just talk about the show with them. And for about like 3 years, we kind of built a relationship on Twitter and became friends, and then started talking about things not related to the show, like football and New York, and because one of them's from New York. So I became friends with them, and then when I moved out to LA, reached out to them because two of them were becoming showrunners on a show called LA Finest. And they were hiring when I moved out here, and they were nice enough to help me and pass along my resume. So, so building relationships through Twitter was the way that I got my job.
Twitter.
I hear that a lot. I do. Like some of the people that have been in writers' rooms got discovered because they had a funny Twitter account. I mean,
wow.
It's crazy. You can get a job through Twitter.
Yeah, and you never know. Like I would say, don't be afraid to reach out to people that you look up to or writers that you enjoy, or find someone on Twitter that you like their work and express that to them. And I think they'll be really appreciative of it, and appreciate that you like their work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Especially writers, because they don't always get, the credit that they do. It's always like the actors or something. So when they see that, I think they appreciate it a lot.
Yeah. And to follow up, when you were first messaging them on Twitter, were you weren't asking for anything at that point, right? You were just sharing compliments and.
Yeah, just about the show, and joking about the show, or telling them how much I liked their writing. And that show was very involved on Twitter. Like they would live tweet in their writer's room. They had someone tweeting constantly. And just keeping it about the show at first. And I really didn't ask any kind of job stuff until I knew I was moving to LA, because they're all out here. So, yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah,
How about you, Laura?
I agree with that completely. Like, the relationships you have with people need to be authentic and genuine and a good quality, because then it makes it less weird when you ask for that favor. And I even still cringe doing it some days when I'll text a friend who's a writer and say like, do you mind passing that script along to so-and-so, or do you mind following up about this thing for me? Because if I feel like they're my friend, or I have a kind of more casual relationship with them, it makes it less like transactional, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm not a Twitter person, but I love IMDb for research. And for my current job, I was such a fan of What We Do in the Shadows, the movie, and the first season of the show. And I went on IMDb and I looked at everyone who had worked on it and tried to think, well, who do I know? And I didn't really know anybody. And then I thought, okay, well, who would be someone that would be good for me to contact? And I looked at like the script coordinator, or, who the writers were. And it turns out that a UPM that I'm good friends with and had worked with a bunch knew that script coordinator. So I was able to say to her, hey, do you happen to know so-and-so? And she's like, yeah, I do. Let me email him for you. And within a week, I had an interview and they happened to need a writer's assistant. And it was really timed strangely, but I'm glad that I did the research and looked at a show I love and then did the work to think, who in my network do I know that maybe knows someone there? And that's probably the creepiest way I've gotten a job, but
you creep.
And I do have a spreadsheet of or like a Dropbox folder of every crew list from every show that I've worked on, or from other shows where, you know, I've gotten their crew list. So I'm able to tap into to that for contact info if I ever need to reach out to people.
Yeah.
It's a shockingly small world too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've just recently started working with with a showrunner, and I found out on her last show, her DP was my first boss in the camera department on the comedy. So like 10 years later, I'm like, oh, small world.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And similar to you guys, like cultivating those relationships was the only way to really get jobs like this, because they don't advertise really for them. It's all
right.
And so when things opens up, you hope that maybe one person in your network knows you're looking for work and can forward your resume along. And then, you know, it just seems to be like the nature of these jobs. Right. And for me, it happened like a year later. I was in LA for a year working in development, kind of related, but also I wanted to be in a writer's room. And then the first opportunity I had to do so was through someone I kept in touch with through connections in New England. And she's a writer from Orange is the New Black, and I loved her work, and I just, you know, kept following up with her and checking in and saying hello and getting to know her over the course of a year. And then something randomly came up. Of course, it's always like weird timing. I had just gotten a new job that I had to quit immediately and take the writer's job.
I hate that debacle.
Yeah.
It's so stressful.
It is. You don't want to, like, you know, sever those ties, but but I couldn't pass it up, and it was an amazing experience. Unfortunately, it was only 3 months. It was a development incubator, but it was really fun. I got to pitch in the room and work with some of my favorite writers. So, and that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't reached out and had those early conversations and started cultivating that relationship at the first opportunity.
Right. For some of our viewers who may not know, can you explain what a development incubator is?
Oh,
and how that works?
Yeah, true. It's like a mini writer's room. It's not for a show that is on television, but it's for the studio side when they want to see pilots and shows getting developed. They're starting to do this thing now where they get writers into a mini room. So for this incubator, it was 4 writers from Jen G. Cohen's company from Orange is the New Black, and they were developing 4 original pilots. So for 3 months, we broke 4 stories, and yeah, it was really, really fun.
Very cool. And how long do those kinds of rooms last usually?
I think they're usually a few months. This was my own experience with it, and I believe they're still relatively new-ish. I think, you know, more studios are starting to do it, just with talent that they already have relationships with. So we'll see probably more of them in the future. But
yeah. And as becoming assistants, did you guys have any prior training, or how did you learn to do the jobs that you have?
I can start. I think for me, there's no real prior training to being a production assistant. I mean, I wish in school they do have a PA boot camp class. I think that would be great if they do that in film school. I think that would be helpful, because you are most likely going to be a PA right out of college. So for me, it was just learning on the job. I think that's the only way you can really learn as a PA, and making mistakes and learning from the mistakes, and learning from the people above you. So, and then once you go on to the next show, it gets easier, and the next show it gets easier. So that's how I kind of learned the production office routine.
Yeah.
There's also like a great network of people online too, assistants that work in the industry that communicate with each other and ask each other questions. So, you know, usually you have to have one of those jobs before they accept you into the groups. But once you do, there are some resources. So even if you don't feel comfortable like going to your boss or something and asking a bunch of questions, like there are other people that are more than happy to help you. In fact, I found the assistant community in general to be some of the most proactive, like supportive people here. It's just we're put through the ringer so regularly, and we have the most random things we have to figure out. You can never predict what the request is going to be. So,
yeah. I remember being on the phone with one of our producers before my last room got started, and she at one point goes, "Oh, I'm sure you've been an assistant before, right?" And I went, no, I'm not a showrunner's assistant. This is my first time as a showrunner's assistant. And she's like, "Oh, so tell me your story. What have you done? Who are you?" And so I started explaining everything. And she's like, "Oh, okay. You might be overqualified for the job, but," and I was like, no, definitely not overqualified, quite just right there in the nook of qualified. Don't let me go. How about you, Lauren?
I will say for set PAs, they do awesome trainings. But that's more, of course, if you want to be an assistant director or something like that. But there's a program called Made in New York where they train you to be a set PA. They teach you how to use your walkie. They teach you what each department does and basic set safety and etiquette. And I wish they had done that for assistants, you know, and being in the office. And I was so cold on set shooting exterior nights on all these different like Marvel TV shows, and I was like, I want to go inside now. I'm ready to go into the office. I just want to make copies of things. But like Jamie said, you really learn by doing. But I think what's important is to not believe that you're above the fetching coffees and the getting lunches, because once you master that stuff, then you're given more responsibility. You know, when I was an office PA, my production coordinator made sure I was the one that distroed scripts. And that was as close as I could get to a script at the time. But to be trusted with getting the actors their scripts, or, you know, highlighting them for table reads or setting up a table read, that was as close as I could get. But if I did those things well, then I would be given more to do.
Right.
And that's the thing that I think is really important, is to kind of grin and bear it. And see everything as an opportunity to learn. You know, I didn't know what sides were. I didn't know, you know, who to ask on set for an apple box. You know, one of my friends famously was asked for a half apple on set, and he went to Crafty and cut an apple in half. And a half apple, you know, is a half of an apple box. Like, it's a piece of wood that, you know,
right.
Whatever. I don't need to explain it to you guys, but that's for some of like.
Yeah, for some of the people watching, that might be something that they would not have known, for sure.
I think it just, if, you know, I didn't want to be an AD. I didn't want to be a line producer, but I wanted to assist a line producer and learn what he does so I can be a better showrunner someday. And I can understand how to read a budget. Even if I'm just copying it and taking notes in meetings, I'm still learning how to read this thing, and how to read a one-liner and a day out of days, and know what these documents are, because, you know, that'll pay off.
For sure. And some of the things we're talking about, I might go back on just because I want to make sure everybody watching who doesn't know these terms can learn them today. So going back to breaking the story when you're in the room. So can we talk about what breaking story means and what it looks like?
Yeah, so basically breaking a story is you carve out the whole story. You're basically figuring out where your characters are going, what are their arcs, whether it's like multi-season or for the one season, and also just doing it for the pilot too. You have to know all the plot points. And so in a writer's room, they use whiteboards or like, you know, note cards, things like that, to basically plot out all their characters and all their corresponding arcs.
Yeah.
And every show, like every room I've been in, has a completely different process. Like some of them have colored note cards and each color represents the A story, B story, or C story, or maybe the colors represent characters. So as I'm taking notes, I'm switching between colors in my notes document and I'm trying to track down everything they're saying. And then on other shows, it's just they don't know where it's going to go, but they know they want to put a certain character in a funny hat. That's a card that goes up on the board and we're going to find a way to work that in at a certain point. But usually it's a very messy process, like breaking it. But every room has its own different organizational style. And then as if you're the writer's assistant or in the room as an assistant, you're just trying to keep up.
Yes. And the show that I was on didn't have a pilot episode. Did both of your shows or the shows you've been on, did they all have pilots? Because we had to carve out the season and then the pilot and the remaining episodes. So it was an interesting process to see them build everything from the ground up that way.
The incubator was all pilots, but we still broke the story for 3 to 4 seasons. We would know where we kind of wanted all the different seasons to end, where we wanted the show to end, because it's really hard to know what to develop early on in, say, a pilot or a season 1 if you don't know where you're writing to sometimes.
Yeah.
You don't have to know the specifics of the ending, but just kind of know where you want your characters to land. Where's their 180 happening and like what's kind of their final beat.
Yeah. Yeah. And then for you, Jamie, being in the office, does it make you more curious about the production side, or are you just craving to be a writer's assistant or a showrunner assistant?
I think that's, eventually I want to get into a room, but I think being in the production office is a great start because you are interacting with all the departments and you get to learn from all the departments, as well as Lauren had mentioned, like you get to learn what the line producer does, you get to learn what the UPM does, and you know how the production works. And I think that makes you a better writer because when you're writing, you can think about, if I'm putting a car crash in my script, what does it take to do that car crash? What rigging do I need? What stunt people do I need? So I think that working in the production office has been good to make me a more well-rounded writer in the end. So
yeah, that's a really positive outlook and really a testament to your work ethic. That's really great. In the rooms for you guys, Angela and Lauren, were you allowed, Angela, and are you allowed, Lauren, to pitch? And what is the right time to pitch? And how do you do it? How do you break the ice?
It's so scary to pitch. Like as an assistant, there is a hierarchy for sure. And some rooms are more aware of that hierarchy, even amongst the writers themselves. You have your staff writer, story editor, and there's a hierarchy among them. A lot of the staffers who are new are even scared to pitch, even though they've submitted their samples and they belong there, and their manager and agents help them with their deal, and they did the thing. So you sense their nervousness, and then you recognize that you're an assistant and you think, well, if they're nervous, can I pitch? So every room is so different. But if I have pitched ideas and gotten a chance to write scenes on certain shows, and that's been really rewarding to get to go to set and have the showrunner call me over and say, we're doing your scene now. And I get to put the cans on and I get to watch something that I wrote actually happen was awesome.
That's so exciting.
But I will say, like, you need to respect the room and know what you're there to do. And that's to take the notes, and that's to just help make sure the day is organized. And if you've really thought through the thing you're about to say and pitch, and maybe there's a lull or it is an appropriate moment, absolutely. But you need to have done some of the work to show that you're good at the basics of your job. And then if the dynamic is welcoming, of course, but no one wants a really chatty writer's assistant.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah.
Because you're there to learn. as
Right.
well. But I think it's welcome. You can pitch for sure. You just need to read the room.
For me, I was specifically invited to pitch, so I felt welcomed, although I was still terrified to do it the first
Sure.
day I pitched.
Yeah.
I was all in my head about it, like, was that good enough? And also, did I talk too much? Because, like Lauren said, you don't want to be the focus of the room. You're not the focus of the room. If you have something helpful to add, do it quickly, do it efficiently, have it be well thought out, and find a time where it works. Like you said, Lauren, a lull in the room. If people are stuck on something, if they're trying to think of like what the right thing in the scene would be, that might be a good time to pitch because they're all clearly stuck. So just spit it out there. If it's bad, don't get upset. They'll be like, and they'll move on.
Yeah.
Be nice about it, but and then there are times they're like, okay, that works. And then they'll put it in and you're like, that felt really good.
Yeah.
But you have to wear that hat of like, know your place, know when to speak. Don't make it really long-winded. Nobody wants to listen to it.
Yes.
Time. We're trying to do this quick so everybody can get home. I mean, we all love being together if you're in a good room, but everybody has a life and they want to get done with the day as quickly as possible.
All right. Yeah. So now you've had a bunch of experiences under your belt, and going back, do you remember what was that first impression like of working on a major TV series? Were there any surprises, letdowns, especially some of these shows we all love, right? And have such a fondness for, and then you're behind the scenes, and does it lose that magical spark?
I mean, I feel like I got a very, I got a surprise. I had been putting it out into the world that, I wanted to work on Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and it took years to finally get, to finally just meet someone who could help me get a job like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I got an actual surprise when I was stocking sodas in the fridge, and all of a sudden I heard a noise behind me and I jumped because it was my first day. I was nervous. Tina Fey's my hero and I loved the show. And it was Tina, and I was like, I'm stocking sodas. I just jumped out of my skin. Like, that's my hero. So, I mean, I got a very literal surprise and got myself together and introduced myself. But you do always run the risk of, when you work with your heroes or work on a show you're a fan of them letting you down. I got really lucky, and I can say that I have not been let down ever on shows that I'm a fan of. And I'm really happy to see that the people who write are people that I respect and want to be someday. So I didn't get let down, but I definitely got surprised by her. And I was like, I love you.
Tina for the win.
Yeah. I was like, what a great first impression.
Yes.
I'm all sweaty.
With Tina Fey now. Did you get to see her?
What's that?
I said, Jamie, you've worked with Tina Fey now too.
Yeah, well, that's the last job that before we got shut down. I'm working on her new show, Untitled Mayor Project is what it's called right now. But she walked by me in the office a couple of times, and then Ted Danson's also walked by a few times. So that was definitely a cool moment, getting to see both of them, because Tina Fey is definitely my hero as well. So I just kind of was like staring, and I was like, okay, don't look weird, don't look weird,
but next time go over to the coffee maker and just take your phone and be like,
right. Yeah, so definitely a cool moment.
That is super cool. How about you, Angela?
I guess my first one would have been on the first show I did. That was the Comedy Central Stella show, and they had all kinds. The Stella comedy troupe are friends with like some really, really big talent too. Like Paul Rudd was a regular on that show, and so Alan Ruck from Ferris Bueller, which I don't know if you guys are fans, but I think for that I was in the camera department, so I was doing like the slate and everything. I would be very close to the talent, like. And I think one day Alan Ruck was doing this kiss for the scene, and I was like inches away, and saliva from the kiss was like, I'm like, that was a weird moment in the industry where I'm like, wow, there can be like a line kind of crossed at a certain point. Totally just the nature of like production and just close proximity to people, but like you're up close and personal sometimes. That was a weird day. And just, yeah, we had a lot of random like bits in that show. Like seeing how different people reacted to like bologna being thrown in their faces.
God.
All these things are going to be so different once COVID is over.
Yeah, I do. Actually, one of the writers from the incubator that ended a few months ago, she just got announced in Deadline yesterday. She's doing like with Genji's company, social distancing. It's like an anthology series. So I said congrats to her. I was like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to see what happens with that, but it's all going to be shot remotely. And they're doing a like virtual writer's room, which is pretty common right now. But I'm really interested to see how the industry pivots for this time and how the technology is going to have to change a little bit too.
Yeah.
People's, technical aptitude as well for getting their own cameras and things like that. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. There was one set that I was on for a network where I felt like as a PA, I was being underutilized. I was pretty much just a cheap stand-in for the day with the other PAs. And so I was super bummed. And I actually told one of the producers, she's like, are you having a good time? I was like, actually, I'd love to be a little more challenged and take on some more responsibility. And she was like, really? Like, yeah. But it still never turned into anything. And I had to like just ask questions to find other assignments or just to make sure that for myself, I'm like, okay, I'm not growing in this position, but I'm going to make it worth my time by learning different nuggets each day, whatever I could find.
Right.
But I was a little bummed by that. But
not everybody is super supportive and like thoughtful about the people working under them. It's definitely a mixed bag. You can work with some really great people that are very, very supportive and are there through thick and thin and really want to raise you up. And then I've worked with people like you, Marilyn, where it's just they don't want to think about you, and I get that they don't have time for it. But having to like think of it yourself and sort of make those opportunities happen for yourself.
Yeah.
That's what I love about you. You're very, I love how outspoken you are. You're a great advocate for yourself. That's something that I've always really appreciated about you and have learned from you too. So.
Yeah, and I think you have a good radar for where and when to do it. And I think that's a really important thing to know. Like we're giving this advice about how you need to tap into your network, but and also develop your network, but there's a time and place for that.
Oh yeah.
And I think you're really good at knowing where, when, and how to ask, and we all have to get over ourselves and ask, and, we'll be kicking ourselves if we didn't ask about that thing. But you do need to, it's like with pitching, read your room, read the situation, and just know when it's appropriate to ask for these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the business of reading people in general. And I think, I guess most industries are like that, but I can only speak to this one. But there are a lot of personalities, a lot of egos, and a lot of great people, and a lot of not so great people. And you just have to kind of inherently know and get that sense from a person.
Right.
Well, and as an assistant, you're a gatekeeper. And so sometimes, like, when I'm assisting my showrunner, I try to just treat everybody equally and be perfectly pleasant to everybody and be on top of my tasks. But I have come across assistants in the business who, because they represent an important person, they then believe that they are equally as important as the person that they're assisting. And you're kind of like, all right, check yourself here. We're all still getting coffees. Like, yes, we do a lot of really important scheduling, and sometimes we can write, and sometimes, we're in the table reads and we're very involved. But, remember to check your own ego, even as an assistant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And then these jobs end, and how do you all use your assistant job to set yourself up going from here?
It's all network. It's your network. It's hopefully the people you just worked with will recommend you for new jobs. And then also you just put the word out to all of your friends, like, hey, I'm looking for work again. This job just ended. If you hear of anything, let me know. And you don't have to keep badgering them. Like, they know you're looking and they'll get to you when something is right. And it might take time and you just have to be patient.
Yeah, and I think you need to be specific with how you ask. You know, like when I go to certain people, and I know, Marilyn, you have spreadsheets for this, but my approach has been, if I'm going to go to somebody that I know and care about and have worked with before, if I'm going to ask them for a thing, I want to be really specific.
Yes.
So, you know, for a long time, it was going around and badgering people and saying, do you know anyone who works on What We Do in the Shadows? Do you know where they write? And I could be very specific and point to a specific show. And I think that helps, instead of, if you happen to hear of anything, it's like, you know, if you can be more specific with your ask, that helps.
Yeah, I definitely had to learn that very quickly when I got here, because I'm a multi-hyphenate. I act, produce, and write. So when I got here, people were like, but what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to act, produce, and write. And they don't know what to do with that. So I had to use that and figure out which part of that do I want to focus on the most right now. And wanting to be a showrunner, I said, well, then I'm just going to focus on the writing. And I want to work on shows like this, and pinpointing that. I wound up on a sci-fi, but it's all good because I worked with really great people who do want to also help me get where I need to be.
Yeah, even if in a different genre, you can always like use that network, and they'll know. And now they know you. They know what you're looking for. They know your personality. They know your writing if you send them samples, and they can hear from their other friends like when something opens up.
And it's important to know who you're asking. You know, you don't want to ask a drama showrunner necessarily for comedy. You know, to read your comedy. Like, you need to know who you're asking him for what. I mean, the first showrunner to ever take an interest in me, I wasn't even his assistant. I was the line producer's assistant. We were all in a meeting. I said something goofy and he went, "Are you a writer?" And I was like, "Yes, I am." And, you know, my boss was like, "Don't steal her away. Enough of that." He said, "Send me a sample." But I only had comedies. And I thought, this guy is a drama showrunner. You know, he's not going to want to read my half-hour comedy. So it forced me to try drama.
Yeah.
And I think you need to know like what you're asking, you know, just who you're talking to, and tailor your asks to who you're asking.
Right. Yeah. My showrunner did read my comedy pilot, but with the understanding that it was a comedy pilot. But his point of view was that, well, if I can help you with it at all and give you notes on it, then build up your samples and I could then introduce you to my manager. And so I totally get what you're saying, but that was how he offered to help me.
Yeah, that's great.
Genre. Jamie, for you, how is your networking going on your current job, and what are your goals in your next steps?
Yeah, I think for me, I've been lucky to work with people that want to help me move up, and I've worked with the same UPM now on all of my shows.
Wow.
He's kind of brought me along as he's moved, so I've been lucky to have him in my network and him looking out for me. And yeah, I guess just, you know, making it clear what you want to do in the industry, but in a way that's not, I guess, you know, you try to find that balance of not being too like a pest, but also, you know, making it clear what you want to do, because then they'll know and they'll keep you in mind for when they hear of jobs. Because even though he's a UPM and that's not in the writer's room, you know, there were times where he had heard of jobs in a writer's room and tried to put me up for them. So, yeah, I think just surrounding yourself by people that you know want to help you and are good people, and finding those good people in the industry. So
yeah,
and hold on tight, because
definitely
the outcome of like whatever the job search is of the day, like they're just cool people, and just remember that. Like, you also want to just form those authentic relationships we talked about at the beginning. Are these people you would want to like go out to lunch with and have a good time? And those are the people you want to help. Like, the people you want to spend time with. So that's also
Also, just because you start in one area on a show, say it's like a first season show and it's going to have, a lot of seasons, doesn't mean you can't move around. I know plenty of people that started in the art department and then moved to production, or, start in production and go to the writer's room. So I think also you never know what a job can turn into.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to hold out for that writer's assistant job or that showrunner's assistant job, because those are hard to get, and you're not going to get them unless you're someone famous's niece or nephew, or, you have that network. And you can even make those connections when you're a set PA or an office PA. And, I got to know people just by bringing them their lunch and having small talk with them. And then eventually they became my friends. And if you have a good attitude about, the jobs that you don't necessarily want to be doing, but you understand that they're a means to get to where you want to go, I think that good attitude goes a long way.
Yeah. So up next, we're going to talk about, do I stay or do I go, and goals. So you all made the move. You've been assistants. You're crushing it. And do you see yourself staying here long term? Or...
Well, I just signed a 15-month lease, so
okay.
I'm in this thing. Yeah, I mean, I love it. I'm from New York and worked there for a while, but I see myself staying here a long time. And I mean, with friends like you guys, hello. Of course I'm going to stay. Yeah, and it's beautiful.
I know the weather. It's really good.
Yes.
Yeah, I see myself staying long term. I think that, I like the weather a lot better than the East Coast for sure. I'll take the sunny skies, but I think that there's just a lot more opportunity out here, especially with all the major studios being out here, and there's just more room for jobs. And I love LA, and I like the landscape better than New York City. But I love New York, but I'm done. I'm good with being done with it.
Yes.
I'm gonna see how it goes. There's part of me that I feel like just, I miss the greenery a little bit. Like, I do miss elements of the East Coast a lot, and it's always the relationships. But the longer you're in a place, this is my third relocation. I'm from Virginia. I moved to New York, and then I moved to Boston, and now I'm here. So there is a sort of like expectation now that I have for getting to know a new city. And it takes about 3 to 5 years to start to feel comfortable anywhere you move. So there are going to be rough times where you feel out of place, and like you're still measuring it against your last, home. And it bottom line comes down to the relationships. Like, I can see that I'm forming great relationships out here. You ladies are lovely. And there's a lot of other aspects of LA that I really love. The nightlife. Boston closed down pretty early, so I am really enjoying like the socialness of LA.
Yeah.
Really, like, everybody makes a big effort to keep in touch and to meet up, which makes this time so difficult right now because now we're all stuck inside. But in general, that's something that I really craved when I was living back east. I felt like the cold weather made people go inside for longer periods of time. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't see them until the summer, and, then they have family vacations. So that's something that I've really enjoyed since I moved here. So we're going to see how it goes, and just, I don't want to say long term, but I can definitely see myself staying out here for at least another few years and see where it is.
Great.
I'm going to have a home in each place. I'm just going to call it right now.
There you go.
Hi, coastal boss ladies. Yes. So final thoughts for everyone, any words of wisdom on how to stay focused with your writing during this time?
It's a big topic right now.
I know.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that I feel like even though every day has been pretty much the same, emotionally, it's very different for me every day. And some days I wake up and I'm like, today's a good day. I have a lot of things to be grateful for. I'm going to be productive and crush a bunch of stuff. Then tomorrow I'll wake up and think, when will I ever get to go outside again? And, is my family okay? And are my friends okay? And this whole worry. So I think it's really important to give yourself a little grace and leniency during this time, but to focus on the things that you can control. And while none of us know necessarily what our next gigs are going to be, the things that we can control are writing right now. And it's hard and it's so tough to focus. But if you can even say, for 2 hours today, my phone's going away, I'm going to focus on my writing for a little bit, whether that means polishing something, researching something, getting, incorporating notes you've gotten into something, getting notes from somebody, or talking through an idea. Like, if you even just say, I'm going to do that for an hour today or 2 hours, that's a small win, and that's the thing you can control.
Wonderful.
So it's helped me a little
That
bit.
is a perfect way to wrap it up. Thank you so much for that bit.
You're welcome.
We are going to end that here, ladies, on that positive note. I want to thank you guys for joining me today, and thank you all at home, everybody, for joining us as well. We'll be back tomorrow at noon for another live webinar. That's noon Pacific Standard Time. And thank you again. You could take the girl out of Jersey, but you can't take the Jersey out of the girl. Have a good night.